see you guys in the dark.
For some backstory, when I was about 15, I met this guy who would eventually become one of my best friends. We shall call him Dave. Dave and I had loads of mutual friends, so we saw each other a lot. Now, Dave is a gay man, but when we first met, he was so deep in the closet, he could find Narnia. When I was 16, one of our mutual friends threw a Halloween party, and Dave brought a guy who would eventually become my long-term boyfriend. We'll call him Alan. Now him and Alan met their sophomore year of high school and have been best friends since. Now Alan knew Dave was gay since they've met. I knew David was gay because I've seen his porn collection, yet it took another year and a half after Alan and I started dating for him to come out of the closet. We were happy he finally felt comfortable enough to come out. Not long after that is when Dave met his first boyfriend, and that is where our story begins. I believe that Dave and this guy met while on a camping trip. Well, this guy, who we'll call Jimmy, was just a few years older than us. Looked like he was around 25 at this time. Dave and Alan were both 20, and I was 18, and had just graduated high school. This entire story takes place from May to July 2012. Dave and Jimmy had been dating only like 2 weeks before I got to meet him. Dave drove up to my parents' condo with Jimmy in the car to pick me up. We were going to get lunch together. Well, I wasn't ready yet, so I told them to come upstairs for a minute while I finished my makeup. Dave had been there plenty of times and knew which unit my parents lived in. They came in, I finished my makeup, and about 10 minutes later we were off. Now lunch was good, and Jimmy seemed nice. And after lunch Dave drops me off at home because I had somewhere to be in the morning and didn't want to be out late. About 2 hours later, I'm in my room watching TV with my dog when my mom pops her head in and asks if I knew a guy named Jimmy. It turns out that Jimmy was at the front door asking for me. Dave had dropped him off at the library, which was like 2 blocks away from my house, because he wanted to check Facebook while Dave went and ran some errands. He had gotten bored of that and walked to my house to see if I wanted to hang out. Mom lets him in, and we went to my room. He then proceeds to lay across my bed like it's his and talks to me. So much for my TV show. I text Dave and tell him where Jimmy is and that he should come get him because I have things to do tomorrow and I need to be asleep at a good time. Now it takes Dave about 45 minutes to show up, and during that time, Jimmy is just laying across my bed, asking me about myself. No red flags are going off at this point, but I'm just annoyed because I was enjoying my evening TV show. Eventually Dave shows up, but before Jimmy leaves, he asks me for my cell phone number. I gave it to him, and he leaves. The next few days go by uneventful, but then I get messaged by Jimmy. He states that he thinks I'm really cool and wants to hang out with me. I tell him that me and Alan hang out with Dave a lot, so he'll probably see a lot of me. He then states he would like to hang out with it just being the 2 of us. I'd prefer us to hang out alone sometime so we can get to know each other. It's something along the lines of what he has sent me. Now this is when red flags start to go off. He keeps getting more and more pushy, and eventually when I message one of my friends and telling her about what is going on, she comes over and reads the messages and starts sending him random stuff from my phone to get him to leave me alone, which worked, but only for a little while. Now I'm still not sure how this happened, but Jimmy had lost his place to live and needed somewhere to go, so he moved in with Alan and his roommate at the time. Dave still lived at home, and he hadn't come out of his parents yet, so Jimmy couldn't move in with him. It's a small, 2-bedroom apartment, but they managed to fit a second full-size mattress into Alan's room on the floor, and that is where Jimmy slept. Except Dave was constantly over there, so it was Alan, Jimmy, and Dave all sleeping in one room. So now his room was always occupied by Jimmy and Dave, so me and Alan never got much time to be alone together, which was fine. They made good company though. Until Dave wasn't around. Jimmy was an absolute horrible roommate. He never cleaned up after himself, never contributed to the food in the fridge. He didn't even have a car, so Dave drove him everywhere. It was a good thing that Alan's roommate was never home and didn't give two shits as long as nobody entered his room and rent was paid on time. However, me and Alan were getting tired of this, but we put up with him because we both cared about Dave, and Dave was in love with this guy. After the text thing, I tried to ignore Jimmy, but every chance he got, he tried to talk to me, which I tried to ignore it as politely as I could. I never did tell Dave or Alan about the text. I didn't want to start drama. He would flirt with me and give me hugs that were too long and put his hands on my shoulders or legs while sitting down. I eventually pushed him off and moved away from him. Not long after this started, he started asking me things like, "How long have you and Alan been together?" He seemed kind of like an asshole. "Are you happy with him?" Which made me more uncomfortable than I already was. Alan and I don't do PDA because we think it's unnecessary, and he treats me like a human being instead of damn flowers. So no, he's not up my ass holding me every chance he gets. But then Jimmy took it 2 steps too far. This was a few weeks after Jimmy moved in. I was sleeping in Alan's bed. We had finally gotten some alone time that afternoon, and did what most hormonal young adults do. Afterwards, I was tired and wanted a nap, so I put on a tank top and my underwear and curled up under the blankets. Alan decided to let me sleep for a while. An afternoon turned to evening, and Jimmy was now there. Alan was in the living room with his roommate, and Jimmy decided that it would be a good idea to spend some of that alone time with me while I was sleeping and in my underwear. Now I had felt a warm body press against my back, and I was still out of it and figured it was Alan. A while later, I hear aloud, "What the hell are you doing?" and woke up. It wasn't Alan spooning me as I slept. It was Jimmy. He had taken off his shirt, lifted the blankets, and crawled into Alan's bed and cuddled me while I slept. Alan was furious, and Jimmy insisted that it was harmless and he wasn't going to do anything wrong, while I was mortified and creeped out beyond belief. Afterwards, I came to Alan and showed him the text, which he then told Dave about. Dave refused to believe that Jimmy would do something like this. Then I started getting texts from Jimmy again. He said he was sorry if I took his actions the wrong way. He sent me something like, "You remind me of someone, like a girlfriend from the past life. I just want to be closer to you." After this, Jimmy got kicked out of the apartment, and Dave was pissed at us, but Alan refused to put up with his shit anymore. Dave dated him for about another month. After they broke up, he apologized to us, and now doesn't want to talk about him except to call him a piece of shit. Me and Alan are still together to this day, and we're both close to Dave. So close to the point his mother invites us to family functions. Dave has moved on, came out to his parents, and has had a wonderful boyfriend for the last 4 years. This one also never tried to spoon me. I had forgotten all about this until last year when I went to Walmart with my dad one day. We were there to get something, but he had wanted to check the price of ammo for his 9mm while we were there. Turns out Jimmy now works in the sporting goods section at the local Walmart. He tried to make eye contact with me while he checked the prices of ammo for my dad. After leaving, my dad mentioned that he noticed that the guy looking at me. I just called him a creep and left it at that. I had never been more thankful to leave a Walmart. So, to Jimmy, let's not meet ever again. Edit. Because of multiple comments, I am female. Jimmy's intentions with me was a sexual relationship. Apparently he was still wanting his relationship with Dave, but wanted a relationship with me as well. Jimmy was also bisexual, or pansexual. Dave knew he had been in relationships with women in the past, and even had a fiancée. However, me and Alan were unaware of this at first. The only reason I allowed myself to be in that little of clothing while asleep in my boyfriend's bed was because I'm under the covers. I only intended to maybe sleep an hour or two, and would be up before anyone else got home. And anyone with common courtesy would leave a sleeping person to sleep and not climb into bed with them. As mentioned, Jimmy would touch me whenever he could, and I would find some way to get away from him. I'm not a touchy person by nature, and Jimmy was someone who knew this. So there are no mixed feelings with him thinking that this is okay, and that I would be down with a platonic cuddle session. The reason Dave eventually dumped him was because the person he moved in with was female, and he did the same stuff with her, and they actually started a relationship behind Dave's back when he stated that he didn't want to be in an open relationship. So I started seeing my boyfriend over a year ago. When we first met, he told me about an ex-girlfriend and yada yada, the usual of most people's past. It wasn't until about 2 months in, he told me he had kind of a weird event happen to him. Back in 2013, 2014, he had his Not Like the Other Guys Tumblr blog. It was followed by a girl about 3 hours south of where he lives. They ended up talking for a very long time. Both the same age, and in high school, they confided in each other about everything. He claims he never crushed on her, but she definitely sent questionable material and obviously liked him. Anywho, his high school girlfriend at the time finds his Tumblr and demands he never speaks to the girl ever again. Fast forward to 2018, and we are away at college. His mom contacts him and lets him know there's a letter in the mail from a different county jail. Name on the letter, the girl from the Tumblr. Only way he thinks she finds his mother's home address is because she Googled his mother's name, which popped up his childhood home residence. The letter has some rant regarding her love for him, and after a time served, would love to meet. For him, this is very confusing. Call from his mom telling him that the contents of the letter. Locked up? For what, he asks. He Googled her name, and she's now in prison for 7 years because of a felony hit and run, under the influence, and at age 17 where she hit a young college-aged male. Got out the car and checked on him and her car, and drove off. The poor kid sadly passed, aka added vehicle manslaughter. Her sister has tried reaching out to him on Facebook and has had to block her. She messaged him stating that she had given his name and that the girl from Tumblr who is locked up wants to talk to him. He had completely forgotten about this girl, and she has not forgotten about him. I think it is funny that she somehow found his address. However, part of me questions if she will randomly show up at his door in 2025. He ultimately decided, let's not meet. I don't want to meet you, ever. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.